10,000 years ago, something strange happened. On opposite sides of the planet, civilizations rose from the dust. They never met. They never traded. They didn't even know the others existed. The Egyptians, the Chinese, the Maya, the Romans, the Aboriginal Australians, separated by oceans, separated by thousands of years, separated by languages that had nothing in common, and yet they all wrote down the exact same rules. No incest, no murder, no theft, no desecration of the dead. How? How did isolated cultures that never spoke, never traded, never met, how did they all independently arrive at the same moral code? The answer isn't religion. It isn't philosophy. It isn't some ancient lawgiver who traveled the world spreading rules. The answer is hiding inside your skull right now, in a mechanism so ancient, so deeply wired into your biology that it shaped every civilization that ever existed. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how it works. In the early 1900s, anthropologists began doing something nobody had done before. They stopped studying one culture at a time and started comparing them all. Thousands of cultures, every continent, every climate, every level of technology, from hunter-gatherer tribes in the Amazon to the towering empires of Mesopotamia. And what they found shocked the academic world. Across nearly every single culture, no matter how isolated, no matter how different the language or the gods or the climate, the same prohibitions kept appearing, again and again, like a pattern woven into the fabric of humanity itself. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, studied this pattern obsessively, and he concluded that only two taboos were truly universal across every human society that ever existed: incest and the killing of one's own father. Everything else, he argued, was cultural. But these were written into something deeper than culture. And he was right about one thing. Incest is the most universal taboo in human history. Not the most common, not the most strictly enforced, but the most universal. Almost every known society, from the frozen tribes of Siberia to the island kingdoms of Polynesia, independently declared it forbidden. But here's the question that kept anthropologists awake at night. If these cultures never met, if they had no shared religion, no shared language, no shared history, how did they all reach the same conclusion? There are only two possible explanations. Either there was some ancient source, some original civilization that taught all the others, a theory that falls apart the moment you look at the timeline, or the answer is not in their culture at all, it's in their biology. And that's where things get fascinating. Let's start with the obvious answer. The one most people assume: incest causes genetic problems. When close relatives reproduce, harmful recessive genes meet each other, and the children suffer deformities, disease, reduced fertility. Every culture eventually learned this the hard way through generations of suffering. It sounds logical, it sounds scientific, and it's the explanation most people accept without thinking further. But there's a massive problem with this theory, and it's a problem that very few people talk about. Ancient humans didn't know about DNA, they didn't know about genes, they didn't have microscopes, they had no understanding of heredity at the molecular level. The Egyptians, the Chinese, the Maya, the Aboriginal Australians, none of them had any scientific framework for understanding genetic inheritance. So how did they all reach the same conclusion? How did a farmer in ancient Mesopotamia and a fisherman in ancient Polynesia independently figure out that inbreeding was dangerous without any knowledge of genetics? And here's an even deeper problem. The genetic argument only works if the consequences are immediate and visible. But inbreeding doesn't always produce obvious defects. Sometimes it takes generations. Sometimes the damage is invisible. Sometimes the children look perfectly healthy. If the taboo was purely based on observing genetic damage, many cultures would never have developed it at all. The damage was too slow, too hidden, too inconsistent to be the sole basis for such a universal and absolute prohibition. So if genetics alone can't explain it, what can? The answer lies in a discovery so elegant, so perfectly aligned with evolutionary biology, that it almost feels like the universe was waiting for someone to notice it. In 1891, a Finnish anthropologist named Edvard Westermarck proposed a radical theory, a theory that would take nearly a century to be fully confirmed. He said the incest taboo doesn't come from religion, it doesn't come from law, it doesn't come from observing genetic damage over generations. It comes from your brain. Specifically, he proposed that humans develop a natural sexual aversion to people they grow up with in early childhood. Not because they're told to, not because they learn it, but because their brains are literally wired to reject attraction to familiar individuals. He called it reverse sexual imprinting, and the scientific community laughed at him for decades. until the evidence became impossible to ignore. In the 1970s and 1980s, researchers began testing Westermarck's hypothesis with real-world data, and the results were staggering. In Israeli kibbutzim, collective farming communities where children were raised together in groups from infancy, researchers tracked hundreds of individuals who had grown up side by side. Out of thousands of potential pairings, almost none of them married each other, even when the community encouraged it, even when they were unrelated by blood. In Taiwan, the practice of shim-pua marriage involved raising a girl alongside her future husband from childhood. The intention was to create a bond. The result was the opposite. These marriages had dramatically lower fertility rates, higher divorce rates, and lower reported satisfaction than arranged marriages where the couple met as adults. The pattern was consistent across cultures, across continents, across decades. Not every researcher agrees on exactly how much of this comes from biology versus the culture of the community itself. And that debate is still alive today. But the pattern itself is too consistent in too many unrelated places to dismiss as coincidence. People who grow up together develop a deep instinctive aversion to each other. Not because they're taught, not because they're punished, but because their brains are wired to reject it. And this wiring is ancient. It predates civilization. It predates language. It predates every religion ever invented. It is written into the oldest parts of the human brain. The parts we share with other primates, the parts that were shaped by millions of years of evolution. This is why every civilization banned incest. Not because they independently discovered the genetic argument, not because a god told them, but because their brains, your brain, was already telling them. The disgust you feel when you think about it, that's not your culture talking. That's 50 million years of evolution, whispering a warning that kept your ancestors alive. But here's where the story gets complicated. Because if this mechanism is so powerful, so deeply wired, so universal, why did some of the most famous civilizations in history break it? The answer takes us to the banks of the Nile. For 3,000 years, the royal family of ancient Egypt practiced incest openly. Brother married sister, father married daughter, the practice wasn't hidden. It was celebrated. It was divine. Cleopatra married two of her brothers. The Ptolemaic dynasty, which ruled Egypt for nearly 3 centuries, was so inbred that their family tree looks less like a tree and more like a tangled knot. Why? Why did the most sophisticated civilization of the ancient world violate the most universal taboo in human history? Because they believed they were gods. The pharaohs didn't see themselves as human. They were living embodiments of Horus. Their blood was divine. And gods don't follow human rules. The Westermarck effect works on the human brain. But when you convince yourself you are not human, when you build an entire religion around your own divinity, you can override even the oldest instincts in your biology. And the price was devastating. Tutankhamun, the boy king, the most famous pharaoh in history, was the product of generations of inbreeding. Modern DNA analysis of his mummy revealed a catalog of suffering. A cleft palate, a clubfoot, a weakened immune system. He walked with a cane. He suffered from malaria. His bones showed signs of necrosis, the slow death of bone tissue. He was 18 when he died, and the Ptolemaic dynasty, the family of Cleopatra, paid a price of its own. Generation after generation of inbreeding left the family genetically fragile long before its politics ever became fragile. By the time Rome came knocking, the dynasty was already a shadow of the empire it once was, a family tree so tangled it could barely produce a healthy heir, let alone a strong one. The lesson is brutal and clear. The Westermarck effect is not a suggestion. It is not a cultural preference. It is a biological safeguard, refined over millions of years, and the civilizations that thought they were above it paid for it in blood. But incest is just one piece of the puzzle. The universal moral code goes far deeper than that. Murder, theft, the desecration of the dead, the breaking of promises. These prohibitions appear in culture after culture, civilization after civilization, with striking consistency. And the explanation is the same. It's not divine command. It's not philosophical reasoning. It's evolutionary pressure. Here's how it works. Imagine two groups of early humans. Group A cooperates. They share food, they protect each other, they punish those who steal or kill within the group. Group B does not. Everyone looks out for themselves. Theft is common. Violence is constant. Trust is non-existent. Which group survives? Over thousands of generations, the answer is obvious. Group A thrives. Group B tears itself apart. The cooperative genes spread. The selfish genes die out. And over time, the human brain evolves to feel disgust at betrayal, guilt at theft, horror at murder. These feelings aren't taught, they're felt, they're automatic. They're the residue of millions of years of evolutionary pressure, selecting for brains that cooperate and punishing brains that don't. This is what philosophers call the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It appears in Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, and dozens of other traditions. But it wasn't invented by any of them, it was discovered by all of them, because it's written into the hardware of the human brain. The moral code wasn't created, it was selected, and here's where it gets truly unsettling. Because the moral code that evolved for small tribes of 150 people doesn't work very well in a world of 8 billion. Your brain was designed for a world where everyone you met was someone you'd see again, where reputation mattered, where betrayal had immediate consequences, where cooperation was visible and rewarding. That world is gone. Today, you interact with thousands of strangers every day. You make decisions that affect people you'll never meet. You scroll through a feed of billions of faces, and your brain can't process any of it as real. The ancient moral machinery is still running, but it's running in a world it was never designed for. And that mismatch is everywhere. It's in the way people behave online, cruel in ways they'd never be face-to-face. It's in the way political polarization works, dividing the world into tribes and treating outsiders as threats. It's in the mental health crisis, in the loneliness epidemic, in the strange, hollow feeling that something fundamental is missing from modern life. Your brain is still running the same software it ran 50,000 years ago, but the world has changed. And the gap between that ancient software and the modern world is the source of more suffering than almost any war or famine in human history. Understanding this doesn't fix it, but it's the first step. Because once you understand that your moral instincts are not divine commands, not cultural inventions, but ancient survival mechanisms, you can start to see where they help you and where they hurt you. You can start to see the difference between the rules that keep you alive and the rules that were never meant for the world you live in now. So the next time you feel a deep, instinctive disgust at something, the next time something feels wrong in a way you can't quite explain, ask yourself a question. Is this my culture talking? Is this my religion? Is this my upbringing? Or is this something older, something deeper? Something written into the very architecture of my brain by millions of years of evolution, whispering a warning that kept my ancestors alive? Because the answer will change how you see yourself and how you see every civilization that ever existed. They didn't invent the moral code, they discovered it, just like you're discovering it right now. And if you want to understand the next layer, if you want to know why your face evolved to take a punch and why your hands were built for violence instead of tools, click this video right here, because the answers will change how you see your own body forever.